I do honestly believe that us 3 countries collaborating in this perspective with the webinar series of Exploring Southern Africa makes a benefit for all 3 of our countries, but obviously also of the countries we are presenting. And today we are very happy to present Namibia. Namibia is the 3rd most important training partner for Austria in Southern Africa in the office which our office in Johannesburg covers. And just behind South Africa and Mauritius, Namibia is the 3rd biggest exporter for us. And that's why it shows how important it is to also show spotlight on Namibia today and to look at the opportunities. Over the last couple of years since I arrived in Johannesburg, we saw a raised interest in Namibia. Obviously, there are the buzzwords like the Hyphen project, and I think we will hear a little bit more about this today. And I honestly believe that all our participants are not here to hear from the trade commissioners, but they're here to hear from the experts. So I would like to hand over now to my Swiss colleague, to Stephanie. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martin, and welcome to all of you. Allow me to briefly share my presentation, just a short introduction. I hope you can all see my screen. Yes, you can. Fantastic. Okay, very good. So who are we, the Swiss Business Hub? We offer tailored support to Swiss, but also Liechtenstein companies, enabling their market access throughout Southern and Eastern Africa, and this across various sectors from medtech to fintech, infrastructure as well. And we support as well African companies in their ventures into Switzerland. I would like to briefly introduce the large infrastructure mandate that Switzerland's launched beginning of 2022. For this I will give a very brief introduction into the Swiss cleantech landscape, especially those of cleantech and hydrogen, and briefly indicate how our Export Credit Agency and Team Switzerland can contribute to major infrastructure projects in Namibia, and collaborating very closely with general contractors and EPCs as well. Here you can see the different key sectors where Swiss expertise in large infrastructure projects spans across. We have selected 3 from in the area of mobility, from railway, and also energy on the clean tech side, and green hydrogen, as well as you can see it listed here, as well as on the waste management side and wastewater. As I said before, a short introduction on how it works on the Swiss side, on the Swiss clean tech and hydrogen front. It's really a combination between an exchange of private sector, academia, and also government as well. Coming to the Team Switzerland in infrastructure, here to highlight SURF, which is our export credit agency, and some of the associations which could also be of interest to some of the participants from Swiss Rail, which specializes in railway solutions, has railway members, as well as Swiss MEM as well. And here, my last slide, as I said, I think it's important to highlight that we are focusing through our export credit agency on in infrastructure projects. In particular, as you can see here, the 3 sectors which are key, from power generation to infrastructure, trains, and mechanical engineering. I will stop it here to give the floor to the other participants. If you would like to connect, it will be our absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I think we will also share the presentations afterwards, just before we continue. Every presentation that will be shown will be sent through to the participants later. It's now my pleasure to introduce the German ambassador, Mr. Hutter, who's sitting in Windhoek since this year. Mr. Hutter, the screen is yours.
Thank you, and welcome to all the participants from Windhoek. Yeah, let me give the Windhoek perspective. I have been here since July, and what I notice is that there's a strong feeling here, an atmosphere of a new beginning, a new energy, and a new vision for the country. This country, of course, has traditional pillars of its economy, mining, tourism, and agriculture, but with green hydrogen and also potential oil and gas findings, there is a very positive vibe in the country. And that is something that German companies, of course, also other companies, are very keen on engaging with. I look at Namibia, of course, also from the political perspective, and I believe that for most companies that at least I have contact with, the fact that Namibia is a very stable country, has a democracy, has rule of law, is an important asset, because you don't want to trade with a country or even invest in a country where you don't know how the situation is 5 years down the road. So those are important assets for the country. Secondly, you have NIPDB. Francois will speak after me on the opportunities that Namibia presents for investors and for companies. I saw Nangula and Uwanja this morning at the launch of an apprenticeship program between the Goethe Institute and NIPDB, where young Namibians will eventually go to join German companies as apprentices. And NIPDB is a strong asset within the Namibian government to promote investment. I think that the new technologies, green hydrogen, are really important for Namibia to open up a new chapter as a modern economy that is leading the path for other countries as well. And that is something where a lot of German companies have already traveled to Namibia to see how they can connect. Tony Boykes can tell you more about that. So that is definitely an asset. I want to finish by saying that Germany and Namibia have been very, very closely linked together. And of course, that is also true for the time before independence. Generally speaking, the way I have experienced the country so far, there is a lot of German affinity. There is a lot of positive attitude towards people who speak German. There's a lot of interest amongst young Namibians to travel to Germany to get job opportunities. So I think these are definitely assets for German or German-speaking companies. And with that, I want to close. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We really appreciate you being here today and for taking the time to say a few words on behalf of the German Embassy. I will now hand over to the Namibian Investment and Promotion Board, Development Board, Francois van Schalkwyk. It's always a pleasure I love working with you in NIPDB. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and it's amazing how you've managed to present or preserve and present Namibia so well in the international limelight and the international market. So I'm very happy to have you here today and for you to join and for you to speak. But I'm going to stop speaking now and hand over to you.
Good morning, Alexa, and good morning, Your Excellencies, and all the other guests joining us. Thank you very much for joining us today. Of course, this is a very exciting time for us as well. I would like to share a slide back with you, but it seems I can't for some reason. Let me just see.
You are a presenter, so you should be able to do it. But if you can't do it, then I'll share it for you. Francois?
And now we lost him.
Yeah. Let's see if we wait a second to see if he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Frozen.
And it might make sense for you, Alexa, to then show the presentation once he's back.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Mm.
I just want to see. Oh, here we go. He's coming again. But I think now he's joined. Can you see him in the list, Wiebke?
I'm trying to find him. Here he is. There we go. He should be able to speak. Francois?
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
Apologies for that.
Always technical glitches.
So Alexa, maybe if you can present, then
I will do that. I'll share for you.
Easier. So yeah, whilst we kick off, my name is Francois van Schalkwyk. I'm the Executive Director for Investment at NIPDB. I think today I want to kind of touch quickly on our priority sectors and also the kind of more minor sectors that we're looking at as well, but that we've seen really have significant potential going forward. So if we could go to the next slide. So Namibia, of course, like the ambassador also mentioned, green hydrogen and oil and gas is one of the emerging industries, or two of the emerging industries for us. We're also a large uranium producer, in fact, the third largest producer globally. Potentially, when the next two mines kick off later in the next 48 months, possibly the second largest producer globally. So it is a very important commodity for us. We're also kind of branching out in areas such as biomass and, of course, wind and solar energy, and the resource and also the opportunities that resource offers is very important to us. Namibia is quite interestingly, we're a very we like to think of ourselves as farmers, I think all of us, in some way or another. And so we also quite a high quality beef producer. Also one of the, or actually the only African country that exports beef to China, the European Union, as well as the US. And then, of course, we're trying to leverage this new energy in the market, but also new interest in the market to grow other areas or other subsectors in the agricultural sector, amongst others, blueberries and grapes, which are more like the high value commodities, high value fruits, but also other livestock, and in particular around meats, so lamb and of course goat, for in particular the Middle Eastern markets. So when we look kind of beyond mining and agriculture, maybe the next slide, please. Beyond mining and agriculture, there are other areas as well. So we're increasingly focusing on manufacturing in particular. So in other words, whatever we extract from the mining process to actually process as much of that domestically to have a product to export. At the same time, we also focus on business services, and in particular outsourcing. Outsourcing has become a very interesting area of business for Namibia. So we see a number of companies actually being very interested in bringing their offshore facilities here. So we know that in particular in Germany, many companies, especially the Mittelstand, had a very tough time with outsourcing, not only in terms of services, but also manufacturing in Asia. Of course, it's not always plain sailing operating that far away. And of course, the advantage that Namibia has is that we have, run about the same time zone. So that obviously makes a big difference. And then, of course, all the services and also investment relating to tourism in particular. So we've seen also an increasing number of investors being interested in actually investing in tourism itself. So not only bringing customers here, but also in particular looking at hotels, resorts, conferencing facilities, etc. Next slide, please. So maybe just to, I think I touched on it briefly. So on the kind of oil and gas side, a significant find. We're very confident that in the next 2 to 3 years we'll see a significant movement in that. And like I said, also with these kind of large industries, it is not only the the actual investment of drilling the well and extracting the oil or gas, it's also the services that goes with that. And we kind of already seeing that impact in the market. So we've seen a number of service companies setting up shop here, but also at the same time, especially on the real estate side, very high demand for temporary housing for oil and gas workers in particular. Green hydrogen, I don't want to steal Tony's light, but I think generally HYPHEN is of course the government-supported project, but there's a plethora of other smaller projects, actually more than 4 now, that's really being focused on. And of course, with green hydrogen, it also taps into the green industrialization market. Renewable energy, I think we touched on that, and actually the role of green hydrogen in particular in that space. Uranium we spoke about, and then biomass, a number of significant biomass projects are being developed. Some of it for local energy, or rather electricity generation. NamPower has recently invested in a project, or investing in a project, and then a number of offshore projects as well, amongst other from Europe. So a very interesting space to keep your eye on. Next slide, please. Just in terms of hydrogen's comparative advantage, I think in terms of cost, we reckon that we'll probably hit the $1.50 per kilogram price. So you can see, if you kind of just cast your eye quickly over the slide, you'll see that in comparison to many other markets, and also proximity to Europe and other markets, it's actually quite a low price. So we believe that we'll be one of the cheapest producers globally. Next slide, please. I think we've covered that. Thank you. If you could just the next one. So in terms of mining, we've actually concluded a number of very key agreements with the European Union, but also with other partners over the past 12 months. So at COP27 last year, Namibia signed an MOU with the European Union to cooperate on green hydrogen and critical raw materials. And in particular, in the construct of the value chains that kind of emanate from those sectors. Namibia has taken the position that we feel that a lot of these minerals should be processed domestically. We don't want to take we don't want to export raw materials. Certainly not at the levels that we've done it before. And we're certainly looking at really a situation where we can work with partners from your countries, commercial partners that can help us process those products and all those raw materials and export them as products into your target markets. So we've seen actually a lot of interest in that, and especially for, in particular, battery metals, which is quite critical, I think, for the green energy transition. But as a mining country, kind of generally, it's a very simplified, very simple licensing process. In comparison to many other markets, it's basically you typically receive the license upon application. So it's a very simple process in comparison to many other jurisdictions. Fraser, which is the large ratings body in the mining industry, Fraser rates Namibia amongst the top 3 for mining policy. We also, of course, we continue to look at how to liberalize this, and also, of course, address issues around local beneficiation, but also benefiting the local community. Okay, next slide, please. So here is maybe just touching on a few of the opportunities where we think we can afford more investment or more approach. So if you look at lithium, graphite, and cobalt in particular, the others I wouldn't even try to pronounce. But what is very interesting is that So like I said before, since we put the ban on direct exports or unprocessed exports, we've certainly landed in a situation where the number of inquiries for smelters and refineries in particular have increased, actually to the point where we have a number of commitments at the moment, particularly for lithium, but also for other raw materials being made by foreign investors. Next slide. Next slide. So I think we've touched on the livestock and high-value fruit sector. So maybe I'll kind of skip to the high-value fruit sector. It's a sector that's, you know, we've had a number of German investors in that space as it is. So in particular for blueberries and grapes and dates. The reason why these fruits are kind of in high demand or kind of achieve quite high prices rather on international markets is because they kind of hit the high demand season, which other traditional markets that would serve Europe don't. So in particular with blueberries, we've really seen a very large and a growing market and supplying supermarkets like Aldi and Lidl, even in the United Kingdom. And then of course with grapes and dates it's the same. So dates obviously more aimed at the Middle Eastern market. Next slide, please. So some investment opportunities. So from what we see is that animal fodder production and in particular domestic meat processing is a very important thing. At the moment, we export a large number of our carcasses to especially South Africa, where they typically would achieve lower prices, but also at the same time, you know, it's like my colleague always says, we export our children's jobs basically by exporting unprocessed food, you know, across the border. So it's a question of finding investors that would be interested in, you know, not only in meat production, but in particular in the creation of products. So how do you kind of develop a factory or a processing plant that could produce products that will be you know, attractive and acceptable both for the South African market, but also for other markets. Also, of course, we need to understand that actually Namibia can't export bone-in product or bone-in beef at the moment to Europe. Next slide, please. So on the tourism front, like I mentioned before, of course, those of you that have traveled here before or that's read about Namibia, a lot to see. You'll see we've deliberately didn't show you the dunes you always see, but there's a million other interesting things that you can explore and investigate when you're here. Self-drive holidays are very common here. It's actually quite safe. We have certainly one of the safer countries in Africa, and from an accommodations point of view, beautiful lodges that you could frequent. But of course, it's not only, if you can go to the next slide, please. So of course, it's not only about coming to visit. It's also really about how we can work with potential investors to you know work on our wildlife tourism sector, coastal tourism sector. I'm just picking out a few. For example, MICE. In other words, meetings, incentives, conferences, and events tourism. So bringing large conferences here, but also helping us to develop the facilities, whether it's a conference center, hotels, like I mentioned before, or other leisure activities that kind of hit the demand in the market. So we've seen an enormous rise in a number of the number of tourists visiting, and we basically back to pre-COVID numbers now. So it took a little bit of a while, but it seems that especially over the last 6 months, numbers kind of ramped up really quickly. So we're certainly confident that the demand is there. We don't believe that that's the issue. It is the issue of is there enough accommodation available if you suddenly decide to have a 2,000 or 3,000-4,000 people conference or convention, and you know, these kind of facilities don't exist. So from an investment perspective, that's very, very important. Government is also committed now to start a MICE office or a MICE agency. So we'll be working with the local hotels that are present here already, and some of the large names like Hilton, and some of the other international chains are here. So it's a question of how do we coordinate with them when we do host large conferences to fill up those hotels. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for private and the public sector to collaborate. Next slide, please. So why Namibia? Next slide. Why Namibia? So yes, we have market access through a number of free trade agreements. So through SACU, of course, the EPA, and that's a different discussion at the moment. Questions also around AGOA, but certainly we've benefited from that very, very generously in the past, and of course through Mercosur as well, which targets South America. Next slide. So although we have a small market, we are now part of, we're now maybe the small brother to a bigger brother, and I think this our accedence to the AFCFTA is very important. It's quite key for us, and especially with SACU and SADC and the role those have played in developing our economy until now, to kind of understand that we fully anticipate that through the various protocols now being agreed between the blocs, but also between countries individually, that intercontinental trade, or rather continental trade, will significantly increase over the next 5 years. We see it in particular in areas of commodities, in other words, cross-border commodities, and this is one of the areas that we've been working on quite a bit. So in other words, to use an example, to bring copper ore from, say, the DRC or from Zambia into Namibia, process it here into some refined level, and then exporting that product instead of exporting copper ore. So we're trying to kind of really, as a country, focus on that, and we are speaking to investors, and hopefully you might be interested as well, or the people on the call might be interested as well, is to try to focus really on those sectors where there's an opportunity. We attended a green iron plants unveiling the other day, or groundbreaking the other day. So it is exactly projects like this, like high iron, that we are trying to encourage the development of. Next slide, please. So in terms of connectivity, so from a logistics point of view, Walvis Bay is the port on our centre coasts, very well located and quite well connected, as you can see. We're also continuing to invest in our rail network, and there will be opportunities, especially for European rail companies to also participate in the development of the Namibia-Botswana cross-border rail project. We can, if you're interested in that, please feel free to contact me afterwards. We also continue to invest in our road network. Namibia actually has been, the World Economic Forum rated Namibia's road network as the highest quality one in Africa. And of course, from a port operations point of view, it's actually a European company. I believe it's a Swiss company that's operating Namibia's port at Walvis Bay, or the container terminal rather at Walvis Bay, and we've also already seen a significant uplift in business there as well. Next slide, please. Then to conclude, I think there are 16 reasons here for you to really consider Namibia. But I think for me, maybe the three most important ones to highlight is from a political point of view. We've always been a stable economy. We've been a stable democracy. Rule of law is tremendously important in Namibia, and again, my colleague, my CEO, always likes to highlight that. Although it might not always be great to hear or see that, but we often end up with a ministry going to court with someone from the private sector, and the fact is that government sometimes loses because they're wrong. And I think this is actually how a democracy and how an economy should operate. So, and I think maybe lastly, a number of investor protections are in place, and many of them encapsulated in our constitution. So I think that is me. Thank you very much And sorry for taking a bit longer than planned, Alexa.
Thank you very much, Francois. It's okay if you speak longer. I think there's a lot of opportunities that company have seen now. I think we would wait with the questions for the Q&A session at the end. So to the participants, if you have any questions in particular to Francois, please write them in the chat already, and then Alexa and I will go through them once we reach the Q&A session. There has been a lot of talk about Hyphen, and Tony was mentioned quite a few times already. So now we are happy, Tony, to give you the floor to say a little bit more about what Hyphen is doing in Namibia and what is happening there. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, I had a challenge there with just the sharing button. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Wibke. Hi, Alexa, and good morning to the various ambassadors that are on the call. It's a pleasure to speak to you today. We're going to be quite rushed in terms of the presentation. I typically take an hour and a half to go through the deck, so I'll try and be as brief as I can, but please do signal if I'm taking too long. So what I intend to do for everyone on the call is just give a brief overview of the Hyphen project. Please tell me when you can see screen.
We can see your screen.
Fantastic, thank you. So obviously, again, there are always varying levels of understanding of the project. So, bear with me if you have heard some of it or in your research, but, let's talk about briefly the project, and then I think we'll focus on where the opportunities sit for the various companies that are on the call and looking to get involved in Namibia. So going back to 2021, Hyphen was post-government's request for proposals that it put out for the development of green hydrogen projects in the Taukehap National Park. So that's what the park is called. Government refers to that valley as the Southern Corridor Development Initiative. Hyphen was out of 6 bidders, the preferred bidder that was announced in 2021. We then went into quite a rigorous, and as a Namibian, I'm very, very proud to say that a very rigorous negotiating process with the Namibian government for about 18 months, and we concluded a feasibility and implementation agreement. We're now in the preliminary phase of that agreement, so allowing for a 6-month period before the agreement becomes effective, basically to allow for further de-risking of the project, closing certain CPIs. So we expect that the agreement will become effective towards the end of this year, early next year. And then we'll go into a 2-year feasibility phase. I have a slide that just looks at the overall timeline, so we can talk about that in a minute a bit more. So the award has been a concession agreement effectively for a 40-year period, but certainly there are specific milestones that the Hyphen as a developer needs to achieve over the different phases of the project. First of which is obviously feasibility for a 2-year period, at which point we need to demonstrate compliance with environmental, both local legislation, but also international best practice and standards. As you can imagine, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles for the project to get over. Of course, the component that I'm responsible for, the socio-economic development framework that we've negotiated with government, and a various other technical, commercial, securing obviously the finance for this mega project, securing the contractors and the technology, etc., etc. So various hurdles we need to clear, and then the Namibian government then can declare the project feasible or not at that phase, and that's when final investment decision takes place. So the concession agreement is 40 years, but with different milestones built in. You'll see there the 2 land parcels that Hyphen was awarded, referred to as Springbok and Dolphin. The size of the project, or that land area, is 4,000 square kilometers. You'll see the grid at the bottom there basically allows for about further 10 projects the size of Hyphen to be awarded. We understand the Namibian government, and we're also very much in favor of the approach that the government has taken, which is open competitive tender processes to allocate further land parcels. The size of that area is about 14,000 square kilometers. So Hyphen effectively has a lease over that land, and we pay significant land rentals that increases for the different phases of the project. And to tie into what Francois had indicated, there's everything to do with the geopolitical stability of a country like Namibia, why Hyphen as a developer is here. But I think any other developers on the call, Namibia has incredible wind and solar resources, particularly the valley down there, which is that Southern Corridor Development Initiative. And of course, the added benefit is that the wind and solar resources are co-located. And there's an incredible negative correlation between wind and solar that allows us to run an electrolyzer plant, and that's part of what makes Namibia so attractive from a resource perspective. I won't touch on the rest of the components there on the slide, maybe just to mention, obviously, we are still pre-feasibility, we have conceptual design, we're looking to export 2 million tons of ammonia per annum. And we are undertaking various technical studies at this phase of the project to determine the final configuration and design of it. So I won't go into detail here, but this is an overview effectively of what the project is. The different columns represent geographical locations. So on the right, or rather on the left, the SEDI land parcels that's in the park. On the far right is Angra Point, so that's within Lüderitz, and the distance between the two are about 70 kilometers, 70 to 80 kilometers at least for the infrastructure, the linear connections. So that's the water pipeline and the green hydrogen pipeline, and of course the transmission lines, the transmission grid. So fully islanded project, fully integrated. You see all the yellow lines representing the flow of power, that renewable energy power. So in the park, it's really the generation of wind and solar and the central electrolysis sitting within the park, and then at the port, effectively your chemicals production. Maybe what I can just add here is we will, and again, for maybe some of the technology and the companies that are on the call today, we will, of course, have excess water that we will be supplying to Namibia. We still have to work out the details of kind of last mile infrastructure, etc. So with NAM water, and similarly with electricity, we'll have an overproduction of electricity, and kind of the profile of the electricity, the volume that Namibia wants. All of those details still need to be finalized. But some of the questions we often get is, what do you do with the brine? And so, although this is not core to Hyphen's activities, we certainly think that this is an opportunity for potential commercialization with Namibian companies and foreign entities coming with technologies that can partner potentially with these guys. And similarly, on the oxygen side, we obviously release the oxygen, but maybe there's another opportunity there. High-level timeline, we are now in the process of undertaking the resource mapping exercise. We're installing 10 met masts. We have environmental clearance for that. But that's all that we have environmental clearance for. We will kick off our detailed environmental and social impact assessment next year, and then it will run for a 2-year period. Construction happens over a 4-year period, but it's again, just from a risk management perspective, also we've divided it into 2 phases. So super ambitious timeline, but high level, we're looking at construction starting in around 2026. So first portion of the plant to become operational in 2027. We have appointed ILF as our owner's engineer on the project, and we've just issued an RFI to source our EPC partners. We hope to onboard them in the next 3 to 6 months. And I think this is the part that we are super passionate about. Like I said, the environmental work stream and the social work stream are super, super key. I won't go into the environmental bits today. I think the really want to just give you a sense of what we've done with the Namibian government in terms of if we look at social impact criteria, obviously from a fiscal contribution side, we're super proud of this contract. It's really a first of its kind in terms of just sheer scale, and the way that the Namibian government has set itself up to be able to deliver the kind of impetus that we've seen, for the size of the project. Again, we're proud also of the agreement because of its significant contribution from a fiscal perspective to the economy. When we talk about the socioeconomic development framework, that's really the additional add-ons. So the government effectively asked every developer during the request for proposals to talk about how many jobs they would create through their particular project and how much of that would be earmarked for Namibians, and similarly, how much local procurement would be available to Namibian entities. And this is really, really key in how Hyphen approaches the project. This is a Namibian project, and we shall implement it with as many Namibian people and entities as possible. So looking at a socioeconomic development framework design, the approach was really how do we maximize Namibian participation? It's really, really key for everybody on the call to understand that fundamental approach. It's not we have built in specific requirements and saying that we have to work collaboratively with government if we want to achieve that, because effectively would mean what we have to do is we have to bring in capacity building elements, so skills development for people and enterprise and supply development for local entities. We estimate that we will employ around 16,000 people during the construction period and about 3,000 during the operational period when the plant is fully implemented, half of that roughly for the first phase. Our targets that we've set ourselves are quite high, 93% Namibians and 20% youth, and on the local procurement side, 30.6%. We're now going through a process during the feasibility phase to test those assumptions. Those are estimates that we've made. We will be, doing also as the project configuration matures. We will be mapping exactly the type of job, the skill and quality, skill and competency level required of those jobs, and at what point we need to place those various jobs. And then we'll do modeling and understanding what the Namibian landscape looks like. So a national skills audit that really tries to go quite broadly in terms of what are the skills that Namibia currently produces at various levels in existing institutions, and we'll do the same on the local procurement side. We recognize that there are a lot of challenges as far as this is concerned, and this is really where a lot of innovation needs to come from. And partnering from obviously primarily our EPC, but every other entity that participates in the project. Another key element that we've added is supplementary infrastructure, and that relates to the towns of Lüderitz and Aus. And in terms of proximity, those are the two towns that are most closely located to where the project will be implemented. And what that particular element attempts to look at is the impact that this project, and not just the Hyphen project, but future projects in the SADI will have on the infrastructure, public infrastructure. So roads, schools, hospitals, sewerage, etc., and how do we as the first developer support the Namibian government in terms of readying the town. So we recognize that this is a responsibility that sits with government, but we can certainly come in with technical expertise, project management expertise, coordination support, etc. And that's where how we will aid that process. And then we have also undertaken not just to provide housing for the 15,000 people that is normal in a construction operation, but also housing for the 3,000 permanent staff that will be employed on the project. So I think also important to note that, you know, employment and local procurement are hard targets for Hyphen. Once we've done detailed analysis over the next 6 to 12 months, we will then renegotiate with government, you know, the percentage of Namibianization that is feasible for the project. We recognize our role as the first project to help support the government in beginning to build the capacity for the sector long term. But equally, we're the first project to help unlock this mega potential that Namibia has. And so we do need to, there is a rush to market and competition globally to get this project over the line. So our approaches will be, we will place quite a lot of pressure on our contractors and subcontractors to help achieve the commitments that we make vis-a-vis the Namibian government, but we also will be realistic in terms of what is reasonably practical within the time frame, the constraints that we have. That's where when we talk about, for instance, skills development, we know that our approaches have to be varied. We have to look at, you know, for instance, in the construction phase, of the 15,000, we expect at least 50 to 60% to sit within the technical and vocational training segment. GIZ recently, or a couple of years ago, did a tracer study to look at where these graduates find themselves that have come historically through the technical institutions in Namibia, and found that at least 65% of that sample was unemployed. And so we think it's not all bad news for Namibia in terms of capacity. We think for the construction phase, you know, simple approaches, but structured approaches where we look at large-scale internship and apprenticeship programs as one small example of how we take unemployed graduates, whether at a technical and vocational level or at a higher level, to upskill them is going to be incredibly important to achieve the challenges that Hyphen has in meeting Namibianization requirements, but also introducing additional specializations. The approach should also be that we do not want to reinvent the wheel. It is supporting the Namibian government and how do we use existing infrastructure to augment capacities? How do we take vocational centers, and maybe not all of them, but some of them, convert them to renewable energy centers so that they can be responsive to the needs initially of Hyphen, but also the longer term market ambitions of the government. So it's redefining curricula, it's therefore working with universities and other educational institutions, not just locally, but you know, abroad, to bring in the specialization and support the Namibian government in the achievement of retraining trainers, redesigning curricula. It is looking to technical partners to bring in equipment, etc. And very similar approach then on how we look at local procurement. If we take just wind as one infrastructure component, engineering. Yes.
Tony, I'm really sorry.
Oh gosh.
I don't want to interrupt you, but we are running a little bit out of time.
Oh, great. Thank you, Alexa. So just to conclude, I think there is massive opportunity on the infrastructure development side for town transformation of Lüderitz, skills development definitely, and we need to find innovative ways how internationals that have expertise can partner with local entities on the enterprise and supply development side to help us, you know, not just deliver the Hyphen project, but help Namibia achieve its longer term goals. Thank you, Alexa, and apologies for going over.
No, Tony, thank you so much. I know it's a massive project and it takes a lot of time to talk about it. Thank you. Thank you for being here and also for your time. I will now swiftly hand over to our next speaker, who's Mr. Andreas Henning from ADEA Technologies.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me and can you see my presentation?
We can hear you. I can't see your presentation yet. Can you see it?
It looks like it's still loading. Here we go.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Yes, ADEA Ethical Technology Outsourcing. There you will hear a lot of things echoing what His Excellency Mr. Hutter and Mr. van Falkewijk said, not because we get paid for it, but because that's actually our experience in doing business in Namibia. Just a quick look at us. That's us, the two co-founders of ADEA, not your typical co-founders of startups, 18-year-olds living on mom's couch, seasoned business professionals in the IT business, met some 10 years ago at Google, then met again in Switzerland when we worked for the Haufe Group, and have been working with outsourcing, IT outsourcing for more than 10 years. Quick story of ADEA. The one thing that we both realized very quickly is there's an IT shortage. We saw that firsthand. Everyone knows that the DACH market has an IT shortage of something like 1 million people. And what we realized is there's a massive potential with African overlooked talent, right? There's fantastic talent there. It's overlooked by the market. And there's really an opportunity here to take those two problems, one of overlooked talent, the other one of IT shortage, and make a solution out of this. But we did not want to be just another outsourcer, which is why we have also ADEA Academy as a second pillar. We partnered with the Namibian University of Science and Technology, with NUST, with the Hochschule in Karlsruhe, and we have a partnership with EPFL, the University in Lausanne, to give ADEA Academy graduates a certification that's unknown and something that's familiar to Europeans. We had our first investor round at the beginning of the year, which always helps to have some money. And we are in the process of growing. We started with one colleague last year. We have now more than 20 people in Windhoek. And that's not even half of the team. And we are planning to grow a lot over the next period of time. And keep that picture on the right-hand side, and I will talk about that in 1 second. So, yes, sorry, couldn't help it to bring in an elephant. The elephant in the room, right? So why Namibia? And then the other question, how are we doing business? How is doing business in Namibia? For the question of why Namibia, there are two answers. There's the easy one. The easy one is that my co-founder's wife is Namibian, so she brought this up, and then I looked into the topic. And as I said, long experience in IT outsourcing, India, Philippines, the usual suspects that you know. But the one thing that you have to keep in mind is we're kind of a unicorn in the business, in the industry business, right? It's not that we go to Namibia to sell stuff to Namibians. We're also not in Namibia to build a product that we sell on some market. But what we do is we take the most precious thing a customer has or a company has, their internal IT, or their existing product or their new product, and we take it someplace. So the most important thing for our clients is trust. They need to have trust in the fact that we know what we're doing. So Kuda and I, we've been in the business. We know the snags. We can advise our customers on some of the pitfalls of IT outsourcing. And to not make every mistake that needs to be made. So there's definitely trust in us. But the other thing that they need to have is they need to have trust in where we bring these products, the most precious things. And so I'm going to show you 2 slides that we have in our actual prospect slides. So this is one of them, and we show this to our customers. As I said, because it's really important. This is one of the things that when the idea came, say, well, why don't we start in Namibia? I looked into it and I was like, wow. There's a highway system that was touched on that, and people actually adhere to the speed limit because they get fined if they don't. There are traffic lights in the city, and people actually stop at a red traffic light because that's when you get fined if you don't. And everyone who's worked in IT outsourcing, in the usual suspects in East Asia, knows that this is not commonplace. Right? And we show those kind of things not because, and we talk about this not because I'm judging, right? Everyone should organize their country the way they want, right? But the one thing important for our clients is, as I said, is trust. And this looks familiar, right? This is familiarity. This is trust through familiarity. This looks like Oberhausen, like Schladming, like St. Gallen, just with better weather and with palm trees, right? And this has really helped us really to talk to our customers, to incorporate this trust in them, in our company, and what it is that we're doing there. The other thing we're doing is that we try and we have to bust preconceptions, right? We have to do myth busting. This is another actual slide that we show prospects, right? On the right and on the left-hand side, you have all the stuff that people have preconceptions about Africa, 54 countries, and some things might be there in some of the countries and might not, some might not. But then we show them what's going on in Namibia, and people are like, wow, this is really not what I expected. This looks familiar. I can trust this country. I trust these pictures. I trust this company. I trust you with my business. And this is really the reason why we went to Namibia. As you heard, there's more than 30 years of stable democracy. There's a handover of power without an attempt in insurrection and storm on Capitol Hill like in other democracies. The corruption is on Central European levels. It was said it's safe to walk around. I'm happy to walk around all over Windhoek. Don't feel bad at all. There are some areas where I probably wouldn't walk around at night alone. But then again, those places I find in Berlin as well, and probably everywhere else except for Switzerland. But that's a different story. But this is normal stuff. This is familiar. And again, I'm not judging, right? But for to take the business of our clients, this is really important to give this familiarity and to show them, wow, this is really safe. This is how I want to do business. This is where I like to do business. That's where I'm coming from. The other thing is the one thing that we need, great infrastructure. It's there. It's mobile data everywhere in Windhoek. I'm not sure if I have that in Berlin. There are 2 undersea cables in landing in Namibia. So there's fantastic internet infrastructure, IT infrastructure, which we need. Overall, that's why we're there. So how is it doing business in Namibia? And in one word, it's easy. It's really easy to do business there. Yes, there's bureaucracy, and yes, the level of digitization could be higher. Then again, I'm German. This is exactly what I'm used to, right? For Swiss companies, it might be a bit more cumbersome because the digitalization level there is higher. But for Germans, it's basically like what we have here. The worst thing that we had is that we had to sign the document, and so we signed it, we sent it there. That came back and said you have to sign it with blue pen because we signed it with black pen. But you know what? I'm German. I stopped asking about logic in civil service long ago. So these things happen, but in overall, it's really easy. It's really straightforward. Yeah, you do need a lawyer, but you need it in every new country that you go to. You need an accountant. You need that everywhere. So really, I would advise a landing party, someone who can help you with some of the day-to-day stuff. We had a non-profit of my partner, my co-founder's wife, that helped us there. But yeah, overall, it was fantastic opportunity. It's awesome talent. It was surprising that we put it in the slides, and then actually a couple of months later, it turned out it's true. There is amazing talent. It's not that we made this up. It was fantastic IT talent that we find there. Our customers are really happy about what it is that we're doing there for them. Yes, so it's about opportunities. I'm supposed to talk about obstacles as well. And the only thing I could come up with is that, I have to refer back to the slide with the pictures of the office. We're in the process of trying to find a new office space because we grew and we will continue to grow. The difficulty with this is that a lot of it comes with, it has production proximity, comes with warehouses, which we really don't have a use of. There's fantastic office space, but what do we do with warehouses? In a couple of years, I'm pretty sure our office is going to be on Independence Avenue in Windhoek. But as a startup, right now, that's not in our price range. But this is the only obstacle I could think of or can think of. And we will solve that in December. I'm very sure about that. But overall, it's been a peach. It's been fantastic. thanks a lot, and handing over to Alexa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andreas. I think having you as the last speaker is a great way to end this webinar. You said it was easy to find skilled IT personnel for your company. There was a question in the chat regarding where can companies find information for hiring local Namibian staff? How did you go about it? Maybe in 2-3 words. And I see Francois popping up. I guess you also have some input on that. Maybe keep it very short because we're already a little bit over the time.
Very short. Unfortunately, we're an IT company, so we made it very easy. We posted our jobs online, and people swarmed and came to us. So how it is for traditional jobs, if online works there as well, I cannot tell. But for us, it worked like a charm.
Francois?
Yeah, so that's a very good way to do it. And we know many internationals, and I think Tony and their team recruits in a similar way. And then, of course, they are, headhunters and also kind of your traditional employment or personnel agencies that you could approach as well. So all of that works. But I would say by far, the majority of educated Namibians are online in some way or form. So social media works really well.
Thanks so much. And then there was a quick question regarding tourism lodges and retreat locations for a collaboration there. Who should they get in touch with?
Yeah, they're actually asking for a list of places. And is there information on new lodge projects for possible collaborations? I don't know if that is available or would be a one-on-one thing.
There isn't a list, but we can connect them to the NTB, the Namibia Tourism Board, because they work with new registrations, etc. So they might have a better idea. We work, the NIPDB typically works with larger projects, if I can put it that way. So if there is how can I phrase it? How can I frame it? It is when there's a bit more of a strategic angle to it. So then kind of we get involved. But typically, lodges or potential lodge owners will acquire land somehow, whether it's a lease or outright buy, and then they'll have to go through the planning process, which is, I guess, probably a lot easier than in Germany. So I think from that perspective, yes, I'll kind of have a dig around to see if we can find something for them, and we'll pass it along to you. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. And then maybe as a last quick question would be, do you need a local partner and what percentage ownership is needed? I'm not sure if you touched upon it in your presentation, but I know that it's one of the most frequent questions, I guess.
No, by law you don't require it, but we do encourage it. So I think from our point of view, it's a great way really to kind of have that local knowledge, potentially have a partner that co-invest with you, so you kind of de-risk your project as well. And at the same time, I think there are a number of Namibian companies that are looking for partners, and it's not always that easy to actually find reliable foreign partners to work with. So it depends also on the industry. I mean, if you look at green hydrogen, of course, it's very capital intensive, then probably you'll struggle to find a local partner. But something like the hospitality industry and definitely agriculture, there's a lot of opportunity there. What I might have to say around agriculture is foreign companies or foreign individuals aren't allowed to own agricultural land outright. So if you have a partnership, then your Namibian partner needs to own 51% of the land. But other than that, industrial land, commercial land, residential, you can own that outright, like I mentioned before. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Francois, sorry, I have a quick question. Just to mention to everybody in the call, you have a new investment law coming out, right?
Well, not yet. It is still kind of in the making. So it is in its second comments round. So if you kind of look at the lawmaking process, so there was a draft. The draft wasn't accepted, so it was sent back to do a bit of work on. But Yeah, so maybe, and I think maybe this is where you're heading, is that so we do anticipate some changes. So where it might require certain sectors to have a minimum percentage of local ownership. But to be perfectly honest, if you kind of look at what we're doing in the mining sector, so and especially in the oil and gas sector, so it'll be similar to that, where government will have a 10% carry, or if it's a non-extractive industry, it might require you to have a partner. But like I said, I think it's been a very controversial law, and it's been referred back for rethinking twice now. So I think it might not be next year, to be fair.
Yeah. Good. I think there's a question here about German banks. Francois, what I'll do is I'll send, I've got a first information on Namibia, like a fact sheet that I wrote up, which has all the banks that are in Namibia. I will send that to all the participants as well. So we don't have to worry about, the time constraints.
I've sent Alexa a PDF of my slides, and my email address is at the back of it. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to drop me an email, and I'll try to support you as best possible.
Thanks, Francois. And also, Andreas, I think you'll be sending us your presentation as well, so I can also share that one, and your contact details are on there.
My contact details are on there, and I think you have my presentation, but let's double check. Yeah.
We will check afterwards.
Cool.
All right. So on behalf of all of our partners, and a very warm thank you to our speakers, to our presenters, Your Excellency Ambassador Hutter, the colleagues from Switzerland, Austria, Francois, Tony, Andreas. It was a great pleasure, and I think we saw that there's big interest in Namibia, so we are hoping for much more engagement from the DACH region, from the region of German-speaking countries. Maybe also partnerships projects, a Swiss, Austrian, German, Namibian partnership project could be in the making. So yeah, we are at your service. Give us calls, emails if you're interested in opportunities in Namibia. We are happy to facilitate. We're happy to facilitate with contacts. Thank you all for joining us today. Like Andreas said, we encourage you to form partnerships with Namibian companies. I think that would also make Francois and his colleagues at the Namibia Investment Promotion Development Board happy. And looking forward to see what is coming out of this webinar. Thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.